Hey guys, hello and welcome back to another video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And today, we have an unexpected Star Wars movie update. News concerning a film I didn't think we'd hear about ever again.
Patty, director of the Wonder Woman franchise, will bring her inspired vision to Rogue Squadron.
So every once in a while, every once in a blue moon, we do get some tidbits about cancelled or delayed Star Wars projects. The most prominent example in 2025 was Steven Soderbergh's Hunt for Ben Solo. But a couple of weeks ago, in her farewell address, Kathleen Kennedy mentioned some movies which have scripts, which are still in the works, but all depend on Dave Filoni to approve them. But among those that were left out was the Rey movie, and of course, Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron. And the latter is the one we're focusing on today. The one we have a big update for in the massive year of 2026. Who would have thought? Now look, we often talk about failures under Disney Star Wars, we often talk about their biggest L's, so to speak, missed opportunities and cancelled projects that should have been, and those kinds of things. But Rogue Squadron is specifically important because of all of the movies that are so-called indefinitely delayed. It's one of the few that actually had a full-on release date. When it was announced in 2020, Lucasfilm said it was coming in December of 2023. And even my local cinema here in the UK had a dedicated page for it. I know we now know about the Hunt for Ben Solo and the original plans for a Kenobi trilogy, but this was meant to be the first movie after the rise of Skywalker. But here's what's crazy. After its cancellation pretty much every year since, Patty Jenkins herself has come out and given an update, and every time it's more or less the same thing, reassuring fans the movie isn't dead. But as tired Star Wars fans, who are sick of being overpromised stories that never come about, I don't think anyone really believed it. But now with Kathleen Kennedy gone and Dave Filoni in, as well as Josh D'Amaro as the new Disney boss, anything and everything is back on the table. And I suspect, not necessarily with this movie but generally, Lucasfilm is going to surprise us in very unexpected ways. But in regards to this, in regards to Star Wars Rogue Squadron, someone who is hoping the movie's going to be brought back from the brink is the screenwriter on the movie, Matthew Robinson, who sat down with Polygon.com, and despite the secrecy that typically surrounds most unreleased Star Wars projects, Robinson offered up a surprisingly unvarnished answer about both the status and concept of his script. Here's what he said: "I had a great time writing it, but then he says, and I quote, I don't know currently what Lucasfilm wants to do with it. They're in a pretty big state of flux at the moment after Kathleen Kennedy left, and who knows what the future holds for them theatrically." So, a couple of things I picked up from this. I don't think Kathy ever told them outright, the movie is cancelled, it's not going to happen. I think it was pushed, it was delayed, but the way he words it, it sounds a bit like the Lando situation, or maybe the Mangold situation, where they have a script, it's gone through several drafts, it's been worked on, it's just up to Lucasfilm when to greenlight it. Because the way he says I don't know what Lucasfilm wants to do with it, suggests, despite the movie being delayed, despite it not being a priority, it's still on the table. It's still a possibility for a future date. But with all of these updates, guys, with everything to do with Star Wars movies, aside from the two movies which are done and confirmed, it's always a situation that amounts to, well, who really knows? Robinson then touched on why, as a longtime Star Wars fan, Rogue Squadron was so important to him. He says this: "It was a great thrill to write that, and especially to work with Patty, who made it a very personal story. And here's a big revelation, it was very much a movie about fighter pilots. Her father was a fighter pilot. I think we did a great job with it, and I really hope one day we get to see a version of that." And I do just have to wonder, because this does sound very familiar, did they borrow some of this for Star Wars Starfighter? The presumed father and child dynamic, uncle and nephew, but very similar kind of thing. The Tom Cruise connection, the pilot connection, the Top Gun Maverick, cinematographer coming in. A lot of the things Rogue Squadron set out to do, Star Wars Starfighter actually did. But then, Robinson goes on to address the current state of the Star Wars universe. And there's something he says which I think is a big clue, a big tell as to the reason Rogue Squadron was put on the back burner in the first place. He says Lucasfilm is doing fine on TV. Well, hang on a minute. Is it? I don't think it is. Many shows were great, but in terms of viewership and fan reception, with only a couple of exceptions, it's been a downhill slope. And now of course Lucasfilm is moving back to the big screen. So why does he say, in 2026, Lucasfilm is doing fine on TV? because I believe the reason Kathleen Kennedy gave him a few years ago is that Star Wars is going to focus on the small screen and go all in on that, and then one day, when they do go back to the big screen for Star Wars movies, they will then reassess. And that came sooner than we thought. It only took them a few years to realize that Disney Plus Star Wars shows don't bring in the big bucks and much lower return on investment, especially in the case of Skeleton Crew, which I love by the way, and shows like The Acolyte. And so, Lucasfilm's entire model has changed, and with it, maybe now that this is no longer an excuse, if Dave Filoni grants Matthew's wish, then Rogue Squadron might be back. And just to note, because I spoke to you guys about this a year ago when I interviewed the Expanded Universe legend Michael Stackpole, the synopsis back in 2020 hinted that this was going to be set post-Episode 9. According to StarWars.com, the movie was going to introduce a new generation of starfighter pilots and move the saga into the future era of the galaxy. And like I say, I wonder how much of this has been incorporated by the Sean Levy movie. And I remember first covering all of this after the initial announcement, and at the time, it genuinely felt like a pretty decent move for Lucasfilm. Fans who didn't want more Rey were happy, fans of the Expanded Universe were pretty chuffed, finally getting a big budget movie inspired by the X-Wing series and the video games. And it might have been strange, but at least it was something new. If I recall correctly, the biggest criticism at the time was to do with Patty Jenkins herself. People who hated Wonder Woman 1984 were saying that this could be a Star Wars disaster. But with hindsight, I think we've had so much worse. And I still think the prospect of a film like this could be great. But I think in terms of action and high speed and all of those kinds of things, Starfighter next year is hopefully where fans will get their fill. But there was also a recent rumor concerning Rogue Squadron, which now I don't give any credibility to, and that was by Daniel RPK, who said Rogue Squadron is going to become a TV show. I always take his rumors with a huge pinch of salt, and I know his track record is mixed, he has gotten a couple of things right, but with Rogue Squadron, in light of Matthew Robinson's latest comments, that was 100% just a guess, because it doesn't sound like there are any current plans to bring this project back. The future of movies beyond 2027 is a big question mark, and I'll be the first to be honest with you guys and just tell you how it is. It might not sound as dramatic as a wild claim that I can make, but as a Star Wars fan myself, I want to know the honest truth about what's going on. I have no interest in peddling fake news and BS. I'll always be here to give you guys the facts and to state when rumors are just rumors versus actual reports. But with that said, my friends, do you want to see Rogue Squadron come about? What are your thoughts on the latest update? Share your thoughts in the comments down below, my dear friends. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you, always.